What is a monster? A large, frightening, and displeasing creature. And such are the stories told about Ragnar the White Werewolf throughout history. Maybe it was his long, sharp teeth, or his sheer size that towered over everyone. Perhaps it was his deep growl or the echoing roar that gave people nightmares. Better yet, and the most obvious, his glowing red eyes that stared into your soul at night. But it was more than that. Ragnar was the monstrous, ruthless, torturous, evil being that was responsible for the deaths of 500 villagers in the Harrow, give or take. They say he has no remorse, no humanity whatsoever, despite being a special class werewolf that should have some humanity left. So frightening and treacherous that even after 134 years, no one has dared to enter the Harrow, human or supernatural. But with every story, there are always two sides, and perspective can really change the narrative. So at the end of this video, you, the audience, get to decide whether Ragnar was indeed a monster as people say, or not. For now, as night approached, the werewolf leaned over a wooden barrel filled with fresh rainwater as he rinsed his face. Ragnar remembered that day, that particular day when everything changed. This terrifying being wasn't always a werewolf, rather a fearsome and valiant warrior, a captain of the Night Watch. Ragnar, the 6'8" warrior, 2-meter tall descendant of giants, washed his face over a wooden barrel filled with rainwater. He had long hair, mostly in an untidy ponytail, and a long bushy beard like a wizard. Scars all over the man's face, making him look rugged and unappealing. Scars made over a long period of countless of battles, since he was a mere child. His fellow knights walked past him cheering and praising their recent victory. The Great Battle of Harrow was won, all thanks to the captain of the Night Watch, Ragnar Leifson. He saw their celebratory gesture and gave a vague smile. They said, "Tonight the Harrow's in. Let's indulge in mead till our hearts are drunk. What say you, Captain? We shall sing songs of praise and make people write stories about us, just so that we can be remembered centuries from now." The Night Watch consisted of 7 knights, including Ragnar as the captain. They were elite warriors and their skills were extraordinary, be it brute force, speed, fluidity with weapons, or sheer courage and will. They had it all. They would get paid by pouches of coin from the residents of each town or village they worked in. Often, Ragnar and his group of 5 men and 1 woman would do work for free if they saw the village really struggling. The Night Watch was seen as a group of exterminators that got rid of any pests. And by pests, I mean hunters that fell to shady dark practices, monsters, vampires, werewolves, but never demons. At least not yet. But what exactly was the Great Battle of Harrow all about? This was a triumphant victory that made the history books on how 7 knights saved a village of 500 people without losing their lives. The knights got word the village of Harrow was going to be attacked. This was a premonition by an old lady, and yet the warriors obliged. They gathered round the village asking questions, trying to prepare for the battle, but the villagers weren't of much help. However, they were excited to see the knights in person rather than just hearing stories about them. Before the attack could even take place, villagers handed large sacks of coin to the Night Watch. Strike 1. While the knights were on patrol, a horde of humanoid creatures stormed the Harrow. Some were slow, some were quicker, and others extremely violent. Ragnar was the first to hold them off, and then his knights joined him. First horde at 50, second at 65, third at 43. They just kept coming. The knights spread out and took each corner of the Harrow, protecting the village with their lives. The only way to kill these humanoid creatures was removing their heads. Wave after wave, the knights slew them down. Swift blows with their swords, shields high and held strong, making sure that none of them faltered. Ragnar enforced that rule. You always protect the one next to you, skilled or not. It reached a point where even he got tired. The onslaught lasted for 30 minutes straight, not a single moment to catch one's breath, especially swinging steel swords that big and that fast. And finally, Ragnar dealt the finishing blow to the last humanoid creature. At the end of the battle, the knights banged against the armor with their heavy shields to celebrate the victory, but not their captain, as he remained deep in thought. "What's the matter?" the Night Watch asked. The giant warrior shook his head and frowned. The captain said, "Tend to your wounds if you have any, and I will join you shortly." Ragnar's focus was on the creature that laid in front of him. This is where everything changed. They were not evil per se. These creatures never knew how to fight. Sure, in numbers they could overwhelm you, but they were ordinary. He knelt down and snatched the name tag from one of the corpses. This name tag was similar to what his wife wore. This type of name tag would be found on all the teachers that taught in village schools. Ragnar knew this person, but he had died 6 months ago. The term zombie had never been created at the time. Anything other than a vampire or werewolf was just referred to an unknown creature. But this army the knights had fought weren't monsters. In fact, they were the undead. This entire thing seemed off. The village folk stood at the window staring blankly, almost disappointed that the knights were victorious. Not a single villager exited their homes to give thanks to the Night Watch. As Ragnar wiped down the water from his face and his muscular body, the warrior still thought about that night. The villagers' strange and eerie expressions had not changed. Ragnar also realized that with each wave they held off, the villagers were never in any danger. Not a single creature diverted or attacked their homes. It seemed like the Night Watch were the targets all along. The warrior knight had entered his old wooden temporary home and checked on his wife Luna and early teen son Maximus. Luna, the much shorter woman with long red curly hair, was jittery ever since the night of the battle. She kept pulling and peeling her bottom lip with her fingers and bounced her knee with anxiety. Luna knew exactly where the creatures came from. She knew the people in the village were the ones in on this whole thing. She knew the undead army was summoned by the crone behind the stone wall. The Harrow had a large stone wall, so large that it reached a height way past the eye could see. No one knew who built it, only that it's been there since the beginning of time. No one crossed the wall, no one questioned it, and no one spoke about it. It was seen as a barrier, like the end of the terrain in a video game that cannot be crossed. There were gaps in the wall, crevices if you will, probably caused by erosion. Luna wanted Ragnar to stop fighting. It was never the constant shift to temporary homes during battle, rather the concern for her husband's health, despite him being the strongest warrior in the world. At dusk, before the Battle of Harrow, Luna pulled the clothes from a makeshift washing line made of long, white, thick string. She flared and dusted the clothes out while folding them neatly in a basket. The village was quiet, almost silent since the knights patrolled at the far end and the village folk hid in their homes in so-called fear. Luna heard this knocking sound coming from behind the wall, and so she approached. The crevices were too small to see through, but there was a large gap in the stone wall. Luna walked slowly towards it, closed her left eye and took a sneak peek with her right. Behind the wall was a cemetery. It looked like a barren land with crows landing on tombstones and dried grass everywhere. The knocking sound came from a long rod of sturdy wood, held and used by an old woman as a walking stick. This old woman wore a dark, shaggy, black hooded cloak as she walked to each grave reciting something in an unknown language, followed by 3 gentle knocks on the tombstones using her walking stick. Despite Luna not knowing what the old woman said, it just felt off. Something about her monotone, deep voice and the words being said sounded evil with ill intent. Then Luna leaned against the wall with too much of pressure, and a few fragments of stone crumbled and fell to the other side. The old malnourished woman lifted her head within a split second and looked towards the wall. In an abnormal manner, her head twisted to the side, breaking, and then she ran towards the wall within a second. Luna screamed as she backed away from the stone wall, her heart racing, slamming against her ribcage. She swallowed her saliva in gulps, and her breath was short but heavy, panting like an animal. The gap within the wall now seemed like the abyss. Luna, however, remained staring at it. Maybe she imagined it. Perhaps there was no creepy old lady behind the wall. Perhaps the exhaustion and scorching heat had finally taken its toll. But she was wrong. The old woman's face emerged ever so slowly behind the gap, smiling, showing her rotten teeth and scarlet gums.
"Do not be afraid, my dear,"
she said in a spooky, shrill voice.
"Come closer."
I said come closer. The old woman's face changed after that command. Wrinkly, scaly skin like a dragon or a lizard. Massive black eyes filled with emptiness and only a mere speck of yellow as the pupil. Its nose long and pointy, teeth sharp, slender, and all the same length. Luna dropped the clothes basket and ran inside the house, trembling with fear. As she looked out the window at the other houses in the village, there were 10 or so village folk that stood behind their respective windows and gave an eerie smile so wide it seemed their jaws were broken. Their eyes large and round, covered by complete darkness. They put their fingers to their lips and gestured to Luna. Shh. Strike 2. The red-haired woman was a steadfast teacher and wife to one of the greatest warriors that ever lived. Yet for the first time she felt truly terrified. The knights were still on the other end where they got tipped off, and the same eerie village folk banged on Luna's doors and windows. They whispered to her while turning their heads side to side, unnaturally.
"You say anything and we shall take the boy, the same way we took the other children."
Luna's eyes widened as she backed away, stumbling onto the wooden floor. It was right in front of them the entire time. 500 villagers, and yet Maximus was the only child in the Harrow. The rest were taken. As Ragnar entered the home, Maximus was sleeping. Luna, nervous and afraid as ever, thought this would be a good time to share the information with her husband. As she leaned in, the eerie villagers tapped on her window and smiled, making her backtrack immediately. Ragnar asked her again and again if everything was okay, and yet no response. He thought maybe she was unwell and decided to fetch some medicine for her not too far away and get firewood for the night before leaving. Maximus heard his father and decided to join him. Ragnar, in his normal everyday attire, left with his son on this errand. The medicine cottage wasn't too far away. Gathering the firewood could wait. Luna was way more important. The remedy store was busy, hence father and son waited in line for the medicine. Meanwhile, the moment the warrior and his son left to get the medicine, the villagers stormed into Luna's home. They surrounded her as she panicked and swung a candlestick wildly in semicircles. "Get back, you monsters," she said. They dragged her out of her home and put a cloth in her mouth. The village folk told her this would be over soon once Maximus becomes the sacrificial lamb and Ragnar becomes the servant of the demon. They would get their gold. Since Luna was Ragnar's strength and weakness, removing her from the equation would weaken his spirit. They kept her tied up and placed her in the basement. It was almost time for this evil cult to get rewarded. Their disgusting dark practices of selling their souls to a higher demon in exchange for wealth till the day they die. That is the reason they had so much of coin to give to the knights. They never were in any danger. Sacrificing their children every year was their offerings to the demon. The horrid and despicable pathetic nature of the village folk needed one more. Maximus, the son of the strongest warrior alive. They knew Ragnar never ever left his family when preparing for battle. The undead army was released to take out the other knights, not Ragnar Leifson. Once they managed to lure the warrior and the child into the harrow, the demon would do the rest. This task alone wasn't easy, not by a long shot. Those who fought back against these evil, foul practices, well, as Ragnar recognized the beloved teacher in his undead form, so were the others killed and buried in the cemetery behind the stone wall. Ragnar and Maximus had exited the remedy store with the medicine in hand, but the moment they neared home, the village folk handed him a letter with smug looks plastered on their faces. "Your wife left you a letter," they said. The letter was written roughly without any meaning. It was brief, straight to the point, and yet still enough to break the warrior's heart. Luna wrote that she had been seeing another man for a while and tried to tell him, but he was busy in battle. It took time for the warrior to read since he was uneducated, and Maximus helped him along the way. A half-hearted apology at the end, signed with her name. Ragnar was so hurt by the news that he never realized it wasn't her handwriting. In his mind, picturing her with another man was enough to cloud his judgment. The warrior was hurt more by the fact that she abandoned Maximus. If Ragnar was always traveling so much, not earning enough, so be it. But the boy did nothing wrong. He crumbled the paper in his hand and threw it on the floor. Maximus was still too young to comprehend what was going on, and before he did catch on, Ragnar took him to the woods to collect firewood. A million thoughts ran through his mind, fueled by emotions of anger and despair. But right now he needed a distraction, and nothing better than taking out all his anger with a powerful axe on tree trunks. He grunted and roared with each swing, and Maximus got frightened. He never saw the side of his father before. 5 of Ragnar's knights had entered the woods adorned in their armor. Ragnar stopped and caught his breath. Was there another mission, he asked. The knights nodded their heads. "One that just came up," they said. Ragnar, being the faithful warrior that he was, dropped the axe immediately and sturdied himself upright. The firewood was less, but would be enough for Maximus tonight. He gently held the boy's hand, preparing to leave for home, and asked, "How come there's 5 of you? Where's Ingrid?" Ingrid was the only female in the Night Watch, 6'5" specimen of a woman. She saw Ragnar as her bigger brother, a mentor and a pillar of strength. Her undying loyalty to him was nothing short of remarkable. The knights all looked at each other and said, "She's dead," as one of them drew their sword and impaled Ragnar's leg. A huge portal opened up in the woods, filled with darkness. Sparks of fury flame shot out, and a 15-foot demon walked through. Ragnar down to one knee with absolute shock on his face, still holding his son's hand tight, protecting him, when he looked at the knights and said, "Why?" Gold, Captain. Everyone has a price. How long have we fought for these people, and how long have we lived on scraps? We deserve this. It's unfortunate that it had to be this way, but this is all part of the plan. Strike 3. The higher demon shapeshifted into numerous, terrifying monsters, trying to find the best fit for him on Earth. Some forms were smaller, others were as tall as the trees, but the 2 horns on his head always remained. This menacing being was known as Raptor, the demon of rituals. Extremely cunning and deceitful, so evil and treacherous that even the other creatures in hell refused to work with him. Ragnar removed the sword impaled in his leg and stabbed the knight in the neck. The warrior knew exactly where the weak points were in the armor. 1 knight down, 4 more to go. The demon walked closer and closer with each heavy monstrous stride that it took. Ragnar yelled, "Run, Maximus, run! Don't look back no matter what." The boy, fearful as ever, ran like the wind. The demon's pace hastened, chasing after the boy. As for Ragnar, whether he had one working leg or not, this man was still a better warrior than the rest, for his sheer size to move like water, like the sword and him were one. One by one the knights began falling. The students could not best their teacher, not when it came to a physical battle. The Night Watch had been destroyed. The bond of loyalty and friendship had crumbled. But Ragnar never had the time to take in the disappointment. The demon gained on Maximus. Ragnar tightened the grip on the sword and threw it with all his might, stabbing the demon's ankle. It grunted and moaned in pain. Ragnar the warrior ran as quickly as he could, picking up Maximus in his arms as they tried escaping the woods. The wound on his leg gnawed at him with each stride that he took. Sadly, this was all in vain. The demon never panicked. Raptor never hastened its speed, rather carried forth an incantation. The demon's voice was in a low, vibrational tone. The dark clouds gathered over the woods with each word being said, and Maximus fell from Ragnar's grasp. The bones in the warrior's shoulders began breaking, but how tough was Ragnar that despite the aching pain, he clenched his jaw and pushed forward, trying to pick up Maximus once more. The man wasn't as fast as before, nor did he feel stronger anymore. The incantation continued as thunder rumbled in the sky. There was a feeling of negativity that loomed the woods. Strong winds blew the leaves, almost bending the trees with that much force. This time his elbow joints began snapping. Ragnar could master pain no more and let out a painful moan. His entire body was now being covered in white fur. The man's jaw snapped, and long, sharp teeth began pushing out of his mouth. Ragnar's nose grew into a snout. Maximus cried and yelled, unsure whether to stay or run. The boy was brave like his father, but still so young that in terms of physical strength, especially next to a 15-foot demon, was futile. "Snap out of it, father," he said repeatedly, trying to shake Ragnar's arm. The pain was now at an all-time high. Ragnar on his knees with his palms on the ground, screaming in agony. He felt his bones growing and changing shape with each snap and crackle. And then, the white wolf was born. The werewolf stumbled, trying to sustain a firm posture. 8 feet tall, double Ragnar's size and strength. The cursed blood flowing so quickly, his heartbeat could be heard from afar. The werewolf twirled his fingers around on the left hand, noticing the razor-sharp claws while clenching his right fist, feeling that power coursing through his veins. Maximus, in absolute awe and fear, backed away slowly, whispering to himself that what he was seeing wasn't real. The demon snatched him up with its long arms and squeezed the boy's shoulder, making him wince in pain. The demon spoke to Ragnar the same way that a master speaks to his underling. "Serve me," he said. "Let us conquer hell and build armies to destroy this feeble world. Let humanity suffer." The werewolf looked deep within the eyes of Maximus as he walked towards the portal. Was Ragnar really obeying this evil creature? Was this the ending to the epic warrior's tale? The demon began smiling. Maximus tried fighting the grip from the demon, screaming and crying, yet Ragnar looked at the boy again. Something in the werewolf's eyes spoke volumes. The demon said,
"This isn't your child anymore. Your memories will slowly fade away. Your past life will diminish, and your new life will only exist to serve me. You will share the powers that I do. Now, kneel before your master."
And so Ragnar did. He walked to the demon closer this time, slowly, almost trying to process everything, and knelt down to one knee. He was amazed that the wound earlier caused by the sword from his knight had healed. As the demon smiled and Maximus yelled for his father to snap out of it, Ragnar waited for the perfect timing. The same wounded ankle on the demon was sliced clean off by the werewolf's sharp claws. The demon roared at Ragnar with anger. Maximus found the perfect opportunity to bite the demon's arm just so that he could let go, but Raptor tossed the boy into the portal, shapeshifted, and followed through. The werewolf's eyes widened as he roared back. Ragnar sprinted forward and leaped towards the portal, consuming the werewolf entirely. He heard the voice of Maximus echoing through, calling out to him. The werewolf landed on his scapula and rolled to his feet. He dusted the dirt off his soft white fur and looked at his surroundings. This was no city, town, or village. This was hell. Such a strange sensation. Tall, dark, sharp, pointy rocks and mountains, large dungeons spread throughout, chains, cages, and a stench so rotten, Ragnar tried not to puke. But that wasn't the weird part. Hell was on fire. There were pits and flames almost everywhere the werewolf looked, yet it wasn't hot, rather cold, especially to the werewolf that had thick fur meant to keep him warm. To top it off, it was maybe a minute or two since Ragnar entered hell, so why did he already feel older? He then closed his eyes and listened carefully. The werewolf within could hear the faintest of noises. Among the screams of the tortured souls, the growls and grunts from what sounded like 3 large dogs, he finally heard it. The sound of his son's voice. The sound was coming from the dungeon to the right. So far the white wolf went unnoticed, and he wanted to keep it that way. Ragnar was still getting used to this werewolf body. The dungeon door was slightly opened as the werewolf peeked through. A dungeon filled with the most despicable, unusual looking creatures that he had ever seen. Maximus was suspended in the air, hovering by some evil dark energy. Raptor, the higher demon, and the creatures in the dungeon chanted their evil ritual words, sacrificing the boy. The werewolf kicked the dungeon door down without hesitation. It flew and toppled over some of the creatures in front. He slaughtered those demons with haste and ease, like a hot knife slicing through a tub of butter. This was the higher demon's mistake. If it was one-on-one, perhaps Raptor would have won using dark magic, but letting Ragnar fight all his minions first had only worked in the white wolf's favor. This was the greatest warrior after all. The time in hell was different to that on earth. The reason Ragnar felt older after spending just a few minutes in here is because he was getting older. The dark magic surrounding Maximus helped him retain his youth. A few minutes in hell is equivalent to a month on earth. This took 6 to 7 minutes for the werewolf to demolish the evil creatures in the dungeon. The higher demons sped up the ritual before Ragnar reached him, as this could not be interrupted. Raptor indeed created a powerful monster. The werewolf got stronger and stronger with each passing minute spent in hell. Every wound sustained healed rapidly, and every punch thrown amplified his strength. Ragnar stepped on the bodies of the demons he had slaughtered and leaped towards Maximus. In one swift motion, the white wolf did not only grab the boy, but sliced Raptor's head clean off. Maximus woke up from whatever deep sleep the child was in, but in all honesty, the boy didn't look too well. Blood poured out his nose as he began coughing. A sense of panic found the werewolf's heart. Before exiting the dungeon, Ragnar thought about the main problem. How were they going to leave hell? Then he looked at the higher demon's head on the floor, picked it up, and tucked it under his arm. The werewolf wasn't unnoticed this time. The commotion alerted every monster in hell. Hordes of creatures chased down the white wolf and his son as he ran so fast it seemed like he vanished. Ragnar would have stayed and massacred all of them if the boy wasn't short on time. While the demon's curse did not break the spirit of Ragnar or wipe out his memories, its strength flowed through his blood. The werewolf with his free arm pointed the demon's head in front of them. Despite being decapitated, the demon's head moved while the eyes glowed. A massive portal opened up in hell, and father and son jumped through. They landed in the same spot as before, but Ragnar protected the boy by taking all the fall damage to himself. However, there was no dark energy surrounding Maximus anymore. Hence, the boy remained the same size, yet aged rapidly. The wounds that he sustained from the ritual magnified, and in his father's arms drew his last breath. It was at that moment, that specific moment, where Ragnar felt like his heart got ripped out from his chest. The warrior felt so much of pain that his face remained expressionless as he carried the body of his son in his arms. Ragnar walked slowly, looking directly ahead at the village, still expressionless. The village folk were celebrating, thinking their master plan of paying the knights worked. They danced and chanted with strange creepy markings on the ground. The crone, however, wasn't foolish. She sensed that intense power a mile away. The old decaying woman felt that aura from the white wolf approaching when she knew the plan failed miserably. The crone vanished into thin air while the village folk looked confused. Maybe she will return, maybe she wouldn't. They continued dancing and cheering, expecting more wealth from the demon. Ragnar entered the village much further away from the crowd, and he caught a scent. The werewolf's nose snuffed out something familiar, Luna's perfume. The white wolf, still carrying his child, walked behind the houses until he made his way into the basement. Earlier, his heart broke into a million pieces, but now it was his soul. Luna Leifson hanged herself. With his sharp claw, he sliced the chain from above and carried both his wife and son and placed them gently down on a table. There was a letter in Luna's pocket. Ragnar read the letter and felt his soul being trampled over with so much of pain and regret, and then his eyes glowed red. The white wolf ran at the speed of light to the woods and picked up the demon's head. Ragnar took it to the top of the mountain overlooking the village. There was a wooden pole stuck into the ground with a sign saying the Harrow. The werewolf removed the sign and slammed the demon's head through the wooden pole. The villagers' dance and song had been stopped. They looked at the demon's head and trembled with fear. Their so-called lord has been destroyed. Ragnar walked slowly down the mountain with purpose towards the crowd. His grunts were loud and his nostrils flared. Thus begins the massacre of the village folk in the Harrow. The Harrow was covered in blood that day. It seemed like a red flood had taken the village. The werewolf's fur was soaked in crimson from the bloodshed. The screams, the torture, the pleas for help were so loud that it traveled in the wind. All of Redwater, Houndsville, the land of Freya, and Cascada heard it. But it wasn't just the sound that cemented Ragnar as a monster. The demon's head on the mountaintop was enough to send chills down anyone's spine. It wasn't normal for a higher demon to be killed by anyone. But it was also the fact that no one could enter the Harrow anymore, not for a long while. The white wolf piled the bodies of 500 or so villagers as a wall that blocked the entrance. At least what was left of them. People outside the wall walked past it and were horrified no matter how many times they saw it. The bodies would rot and turn to dirt on the ground just so Ragnar could step on them, even after their death.
My dear Ragnar, I swear to you that whatever these evil people told you I didn't do it. I wish I told you earlier about them, and none of this would have happened. They said they would take Maximus and sacrifice him in a ritual if I spoke. Despite me not talking, they still took me captive. The village folk untied me and told me it was completed. My son Maximus was dead, and my beloved husband was now a servant of hell. A small part of me never believed that, and this is what the letter is for. If what they say is not true, then I know you will find me. I have always loved you, and I am so sorry. I wanted you to stop fighting. I wanted us to be farmers after this last battle and grow the freshest crops in all the land, so no child will ever sleep hungry at night. But if what they say is true, I cannot live a life without you and our dear boy in it. I'm not strong like you. I will always be your moon, lighting up your darkest of nights, and our dear boy, Maximus, will be the brightest star in the sky, always encouraging you to move forward. In this lifetime and the next, I, Luna Leifson, will always belong to you. Goodbye, my dear Ragnar.